Hi everyone, thanks for coming to my panel. Using board games, video games, and role-playing games to teach and further theater practices, also known as I Need a Shorter Title. I don't know why my computer is doing this. It's not a great presentation visually by any means. It's more or less just to give you kind of an outline of what I'm going to be talking about. My name is Rennis. I'm a graduate of Fairmont State University's theater program, bachelor's in arts, and an associate's in ballroom dance. I'm a actor, singer, dancer, director, technician in that order of preference, and I've been doing theater since I was about 12 years old, and this is kind of the culmination of all my theater work and my nerdy tendencies. This panel came about my senior year. We were required to do a senior project, and everyone else is doing like cabarets or one-man shows, and I had this idea, and it went somewhere, and I've had a blast with it, and I kind of have continued with it over the last 6 years or stuff. The next thing is like, why this? I did this. I wanted to help grow and reach new actors or people who might be interested in theater. This one will mainly be actor-y stuff, but it does delve into some tech stuff and director stuff as well. And you're going to hear a lot of personal stories. My buddy Andy is here. He is a part of, I think, several of them, so that's a lot of fun. I'm going to talk about 3 parts of a much larger entity today: board games and ensemble building, co-op video games and communion, not the religious kind, and my third one, acting is a fiasco. So first, did it go? Maybe? Nope. There we go. Board games and ensemble building. So what do I mean by an ensemble? When I talk about ensemble, kind of the cast as a collective. Every member, even some of the technical members of the crew and stuff, can be considered the ensemble, kind of the body putting on the show or production. What makes a good ensemble? And this is my opinion. There's a connection between an ensemble, good connection, an understanding of their role in the show, and there is also a trust in each other. And there's this kind of unspoken feeling amongst an ensemble that you're all there to put together as a part of a larger work. Let's see. And why is ensemble building necessary? Ensembles can make or break shows. I've seen several shows where the ensemble has just been with the production the entire time. You can tell that they're connected. You can tell that they enjoy each other. And even if they don't, they're very good at hiding it. And it just helps as an audience member to fully commit as an audience member, shut off and enjoy the production. A strong ensemble working together can be on the same page. They make decisions, and in my opinion, no one actively pulls focus. Pulling focus, there's a couple times I'll say some terms, and I am gonna try to explain them, even if you already know them, for anyone who might not. When I say pull focus, just so I kind of get a read of the room, has everyone at least seen a play or a musical of some sorts? Excellent, awesome. Has anyone ever seen a play or a musical or a production where 30 people are on stage, all invested in something, and then there's someone in the back corner, the dancing fork from the right, who is just kind of doing their own thing? Yeah. That's what pulling focus. I am under the opinion that you should not pull focus unless it is directed towards you. So, theater games versus board games. I am probably one of the few people who cannot stand most theater games. I don't know why. I can play a little Zip Zap Zop here and there. I'll play some Game of Thrones. That's a lot of fun. I do not like improv games. Something about it just seems unnatural to me. Board games, on the other hand, I can get behind. I've loved board games since I was 4 or 5 years old. And once I started playing more as an adult and kind of getting into the hobby of board gaming, I started to make the connection in my brain how these can be used. So how do we use the board games? So I'm going to tell you, I call this part a tale of two zombicides. Number one, I played at a friend's house, and if you aren't familiar with the board game Zombicide, it is a cooperative game. You are anywhere from 2 to 6 people, I believe, working together for a common goal in the game. Moving, talking about things, each scenario has its own goals. The first time I played it, it was a disaster. It was like 3 turns and we were done. Game over, we got destroyed. Skip ahead a few weeks. Andy, my buddy Andy, was a part of this. Someone had said, it's the hardest. The first scenario, if you ever play it, the first scenario in the base Zombicide game, I don't know if it is in the second edition, but in the first edition is the most difficult scenario. Don't know why. It was poorly written. But we ended up beating it pretty easily, if I remember correctly. And why is that? So, as an ensemble, you have to communicate with each other. You have to be in harmony with each other. You have to know what the common goal is and work to do your part to get to that common goal, whether that's in the show or the show itself, whether that common goal is in 6 weeks when the curtain rises, or if that goal is the next 2 hours to tell the story. And that's all done through trust and communication. If you ever have worked, any actors in the audience have ever worked with an ensemble where there is a clear divide, or there are, I hate the term, but cliques amongst the cast. As an audience member, you probably won't pick that up, but as someone who goes to a lot of theater, you're definitely going to pick that up. The show, while it still may be good, could be way better because of the use of ensemble building. Now, you can do this through normal ways of have a party, play a theater game, play some improv games. But for people like me, I don't like them. It takes me out of it. You trick them into playing a board game, and all of a sudden they're having a good time. They're laughing. They win together or they fail together. But it's always together. Like I was talking about the person who pulls focus. An actor who pulls focus is the same as someone playing a cooperative game and you're playing with 6 people, the one person who decides that they're not going to help, they're just going to do their own thing. Probably going to fail. Not always, but it's going to make the possibility go up. So, what board games should we use? I will always say use fully cooperative board games. There is one exception on here. So we see Horrified, Pandemic, Zombicide. If you can get it, get the second edition. Or probably the best edition of the Zombicide, in my opinion, is Black Plague. It fixes a lot of rules from the first edition. These are all 100% cooperative board games. Whereas the one on here, Letters from Whitechapel, you are 4 or 5 cops there's a map. You are looking for Jack the Ripper. One person plays Jack the Ripper. I would suggest that if you would decide to use the game, the director is the person in charge of Jack. That way you're already not creating a divide within the cast. A director can sit down, play the game with the cast, and be able to see how they're going to work together. And these all have the common goal. This is all tricking I'll get in more to it, but you're all tricking the actors into playing a game to be better at the show. So that's part one. Part two, co-op gaming and communion. Now, when I say communion, I do not mean the religious kind, I promise. I always tell my young actors, free acting lesson, acting is reacting. A does to B. B reacts to A. A then reacts to B, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. That is the most basic form of acting in a nutshell. For anyone who's played improv games, it's always yes and. It's a reaction. There's kind of an interesting phenomenon amongst actors on stage, especially experienced and learned actors, that they just begin to live in the moment. From the time that the curtain rises to the time the curtain falls, it's not that person. It is the person they're playing. They have become that person. They are telling a story. It's kind of hard to explain. But there's a lot of active listening going on between those actors, especially experienced actors. And as a young actor, I was guilty of it. But in high school, you were told, learn your lines. And I'm not bashing high school theater. I think high school theater is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. In high school, you are taught the basics. Learn your lines. You need to learn how, and typically, a director may say, I want you to deliver it in this way. And you deliver it the same way time and time and again, and the show is fine. As you get older and you take more classes or get in more productions or go through college or whatever, you start to actively listen while, hey, I got kicked off the Wi-Fi. There it is. Maybe. We'll see. You begin to actively listen. And when you actively listen, things can change. Small discoveries are made when you listen. If Andy and I are having if he tells me, hey, we need to go in a nice way, lackadaisical, sure, I'm going to go. If he yells it at me, that changes the way I should react. If I am actively listening, he can yell it at me, and if he's angry, I may get angry back. There have been times on stage where I, as an actor, the actor or actress who has been across from me has delivered a line slightly different than the way they do. And I can either do one of two things. I can ignore the inflection or the meaning that they have put behind the line, or I can choose to actively listen and react as I would. That's why I'm not a big fan of unrehearsed stage combat in productions. Like, oh, I'm gonna hit you, or like when it gets out of hand and and someone out of nowhere, not been practiced, pushes someone. Well, that person can either ignore it, or most likely they're going to push back. That becomes dangerous at that point. But still, they did what they were supposed to do. They actively listened and reacted accordingly. So what do I mean by communion? It is a state in which two or more actors are in a state of trust and observation with each other. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where as an actor, you become that character. You become that person. There is nothing else going on but the story that you are telling, and it seems new every night. Do it 1,000 times. It just seems new. This reminded, when I was going through this, Does anyone know the term when it comes to video games, flow? We've heard that term. Okay, I see a couple nods. Flow, and I wrote it down because I didn't want to butcher it, is the mental state of operation in which the person is fully immersed in what they are doing. Flow, communion, really it's the same thing. When you play a video game, you become so invested. Very good video games. I'm not going to say every video game. A good video game, you become so invested that the options that you choose, a lot of role play, like we were talking about Skyrim earlier. You know, you decide who you're going to play, you decide your race, you decide everything, and then you, as the player, react how you think that character, your avatar, is going to react, is going to play. Typically, you don't make decisions that, well, you know, I want to do this. Sure, you might want to, but more often than not, I find myself playing the character. Flow and communion are really kind of the same thing. Just one's on stage and one is in a video game. There is a terrible, not terrible, it has its merits, but there's a terrible exercise, a Meisner exercise. I'm primarily trained in Meisner Technique. Meisner is all about the coming to an emotional reality and living in the moment. There's a terrible acting technique where you stand across from your acting partner and nobody says anything until you both feel the need. One of you feels like the other person has given you permission to say something. It sounds weird, and it is. It is the most uncomfortable I've ever been in an acting class, ever. Especially when you don't know the person. But it is basically forcing you into that state of flow or state of communion, just with no. It's like if trying to fly a plane without a runway becomes a helicopter, you know, goes up. So now I'm going to talk about Resident Evil 5. I actually don't hate the game. I enjoy Resident Evil 5 as a co-op game. Also happened in college. Played Resident Evil 5 with a buddy of mine, Sean. Had a blast. But it took us weeks upon weeks because I'd be, hey, Sean, I'm over here doing this. Or, hey, Sean, do I have ammo? I already used it. No communication. Just kind of two people playing the game, but having two different objectives. One of my best friends, Josh, came over a couple months later. We were stuck because there was a big storm, so we decided to play some co-op games. Resident Evil 5 happened to be one of the first ones we played. Give it a second shot. We blew through the game. There were times where we wouldn't even talk to each other, and we knew what the other person needed. It's that state of communion. It was the state of flow. We didn't have to talk to each other. When we did, we either communicated using the game or we physically communicated. Communication is, as an actor and as a director, technician, whatever, is key. If you don't communicate with your fellow artists, you're going to get there eventually. The product is going to happen. It just might not be as good or as great as it could be. So the next part is probably my favorite part. It's called Acting is a Fiasco. Has anyone ever played Fiasco? Perfect. Fiasco is a GM-less game. It is, because the elevator pitch in the book does it best. Fiasco is inspired by cinematic tales of small-time capers gone disastrously wrong, particularly films like Blood, Simple, Fargo, The Way of the Gun, Burn After Reading, and A Simple Plan. You'll play ordinary people with powerful ambition and poor impulse control. There will be big dreams and flawed execution. It won't go well for them, to put it mildly, and in the end, it will probably collapse into a glorious heap of jealousy, murder, and recrimination. Lives and reputations will be lost, painful wisdom will be gained, and if you are really lucky, your guy might just end up back where he started. You are basically, as a group, building a Coen Brothers movie. So now, how does it work? There are tons of play sets for this game. I'm going to go into this game pretty deep because I love this game so much. I've been playing it for 10 years, probably 10 years. It plays up to 5 people, but in the new rule set and in the Fiasco Companion, it gives rules for playing. You can play up to 6 people. You can play 2 groups at the same time and converge on one story. And it helps with that. You roll a bunch of dice, and using different tables, you choose relationships, and you define them. You choose a need, an object, and a location. One of my favorites is DC 73. We chose to play it. It was in the Kennedy Center during a show. I was an FBI agent. The president was there. Our object was the nuclear football. One guy was a Russian spy. One was his wife who was cheating on him with someone else, but it was a double. It was this web of people. It can be anything. Act 1, each pair gets 2 scenes. So if there's, I'm going to use you 3 because I know you. So the 4 of us are playing. And if we go clockwise, Andy and I are going to get a scene. Andy and this young lady, Lindsay, are going to have a scene. Her and Callan, son of a gun. Callan are going to have a scene, and then he and I are going to have a scene. And then we're going to do it one more time, and that's Act 1. Each time it is your turn for a scene, you can either resolve it or establish it. If I say, okay, this is what I think is going to happen between us at the end. This is what I want to happen. You get to choose one of the dice. There are 2 colors of dice. There's a lot more rules. I don't want to weigh you down with those. I will gladly sit down and talk this game with almost anyone at almost any time. And the dice all mean something. You get a die, and then after the scene for Act 1, you are going to give it away. If you establish the scene, you say, this is what I think, I think the scene should start. The other people who are not playing choose how it ends, whether that's good or bad. And then you give away the die. And then comes the tilt. Everybody rolls their dice. You get a number. And then something bad happens. Or something is going to happen. You decide, when we played DC 73, the nuclear football went missing. So we were all scrambling to try to find this thing. Act 2, same thing happens, you just keep your dice. After that is the aftermath. You roll all your dice and you get either the color black and a number, or the color white and a number. That basically just means how bad is it going to get for your character, or isn't it going to get. 9 times out of 10, there are usually no winners in Fiasco. It's part of the reason I love it. Typically, everyone ends a terrible fate. So let's say I get done and I have 4 dice. I have 3 black ones and a white one. I'm going to play that out as a montage. We're going to go around the table. Each die is a scene in that ending montage of those movies. You know, you see those movies where after the climax, it's basically just scenes of what happened to these people after. And each one is going to show, is it a good thing or a bad thing? You can die in this game and still have a blast. You could die first scene, and you're able to make flashbacks and all that. That is a very watered down what I call Reader's Digest version of Fiasco. It comes in 2 versions, the dice version, and there is now a card game version. For very new people, I would suggest the card version. It's a lot less in the weeds with all the details, but if you have any interest in really delving into the game itself, making your own play sets, I definitely suggest the dice version. So how can we use this as an exercise? What does this have to do with acting? You play your needs, your wants, and your objectives. It forces you to be specific. And the best, one of the easiest emotions as an actor can play is anger. I can come up to any one of you at any time and play angry. It's just easy. By playing your needs, wants, and objectives, you have to get specific. You can't just say, oh, I'm angry. Okay, why? Well, you did this. Okay, and how does that make you angry? It forces you, as a player, to become specific. Actors need to be specific. When you're in a scene and your director says, okay, what's wrong? Well, I'm angry. Why are you angry? Anyone can play angry. Anyone can play 1 in 10. It's 2 and 8 where the real acting happens. Anyone can play the top notes. It's the stuff in between that really, in the nuance, that really make an acting, a role, a beautiful thing to watch. This also forces you, this game will also force you to change your tactic. I can say, I want $20 from you over and over and over and over again. After probably the 3rd time, I'm going to get the message that he's not going to give me $20, but I want that $20. I'm going to change tactics on how I get that $20. Also happens in acting. When you break down a script, you can see where it changes, where the tactic changes. This whole thing is improvised. I hate, I'm going to say it for the probably 5th or 6th time, I hate improv games. I love role-playing games. D&D, the Doctor Who game, Firefly game, you name it, I will play it. And I love alternative role-playing games like this. I love DM/GM-less ones like this because it forces your players to be collaborative. The game itself, there's not really a winner except the game. At the end, you've typically created an incredible story. I think 3 out of 5 times that I play this game, we sit back and we're like, wow, it's an experience. There is collective decision making. And this is kind of going back to what I talked about earlier, where if someone goes into what I call going into business for themselves, they decide, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. And doesn't communicate it with any of the other players or actors. How are they supposed to react to it? They're going to be, they're going to be off put. There's the whole, I don't want to skip ahead. Yeah, the theater is all about collaboration. And any actor, singer, dancer, technician, they will all tell you theater is a collaborative effort. No one person's job is harder than the other, and you can't do theater without each other. I could stand up here and put on a one-man show, but if I don't have a costumer, a lighting, and a sound operator, you're not going to hear me, see me, but no one's going to hear it or see it, So theater is a collaborative effort. This game thrives on collaboration. It thrives on working together to tell the story. And that's what it is. Some of the best shows and performances I've ever seen is when people give over to the story. They're here to tell the story. They're not here. I'm not here to make myself look good. You know, I'm not in this show. Well, sure, we all want to look good on stage. Of course, we want that. You know, we want to feel that happiness. Like when people say you were great, awesome. But some of the best performances I feel I've personally given and I've seen is when I just give over and just tell the story. Same with this. The second you become specific and become invested and collaborate, the game gets so much more fun. So I talked about Sanford Meisner earlier, and his method is really all about coming to an emotional reality. When I was in college, it was extremely difficult for me, especially my first few years as a young actor. And I would not, if anyone is super young in here, I would not suggest Meisner be your first stop. Meisner Technique takes a lot of emotional availability and a lot of emotional experience, if not properly done, because it talks about, Meisner talks about something called replacement, where I may not know what it's like for my dad to be shot and killed. I don't know that. I do know what it's like to lose someone, though, and I can call upon those emotions. But if you're not careful and you haven't dealt with those emotions, you can hurt you can open up an old wound. I love Sanford Meisner. I love the technique. I just don't think it's for young kids. Off my soapbox for a second. But he's all about coming to this emotional reality. I struggled with that. Especially as a young actor, I struggled with it. I still struggle with it. I was playing this game, two instances. I knew that, yeah, I'm going to talk about it. Rennis knew that the girl who I was about to have the scene with, she in the game was pregnant and hadn't told me yet. I knew that. Rennis knew that. In game, she drops that bomb on me. I could not speak. Does that sound like character and player knowledge? It's the same thing. Actors are going through the same things on stage every night. It's just difficult. It's hard because the next 2 hours, I know exactly what's going to happen. When I was in Bonnie and Clyde, I knew I was going to die at the end of the show. But every night at the top of the show, I had to pretend, not pretend, but I had to go on the journey every night. Same thing. As character and player knowledge, it's a big D&D thing. That's a big, around my D&D table. You know, we all have that discussion. Now, do I know this, or does my character know this? Your character doesn't know it, but you know it. Okay, so you have to ignore it. It's difficult. We've all, if you've played any role-playing games, that's difficult. You know, you'll be in the middle of conversation with an NPC, and all of a sudden you're asking the question. It's like, nope, my character doesn't know that yet, so ignore that, and then you backtrack. Same thing with acting. It's the same thing as an actor, or you go through the motions every night. You know what's coming, but you as an actor have to go on the journey. The other one time, my best friend and I were playing, one of my best friends, Andrew, we were playing, it was a 3-person Fiasco. And I don't remember it completely. I did go home and write it all down, and I couldn't find that paper. But it got to the point where, best friend, I've known him since I was 4 years old, thought I was going to beat the crap out of him. I thought we were literally going to get in a fist fight over this game, because we were in this game. We were so emotional. We were so invested. We almost beat the crap out of each other. And then we ended the scene, we sat back, we took a breath, and we were fine. Same thing with acting. After the 2-hour show's over, curtain goes down, you take a breath, you decompress, it's over. Wasn't real. These were, that especially when the second one was a pretty major breakthrough for me as an actor. After that, it was much easier for me to access those emotions, understand how to access those emotions, understand how to use a text and how to use my given circumstances to create a character and to live in the moment and actively listen. Conclusion. Why? Acting is all about, when you go to college for acting or scene study or whatever, first thing they do that I remember them doing is they taught us a bunch of different methods. Stanislavski, Udo Hagen, Meisner, all that. And they give you a smattering of everyone. And then you as an actor are able to pick, well, this doesn't work for me out of Udo Hagen's method, but this part does. And then, well, this helps me in Meisner. You start to build your own method as an actor. And I think games like this, board games, video games, role-playing games, can help young actors or even experienced actors learn new methods, have breakthroughs like I did. I want to get better at improvising. Cool. Let's play a one-shot D&D campaign. I'll give you your character. I'll give you your level. I'll give you your backstory. You play it for 3 hours and see what happens. You can play Fiasco. There's a ton of GM/DM-less games that are coming out now. There's one, I can't remember the name of it. It's played entirely through your cell phones. It is, when I watched it and read about it, it's brilliant. There's one that's called 10 Candles. It's you have cards and 10 candles, and after each round, you play it in the dark, and after each round, you blow out one of the candles, and it gets consistently creepier. And that atmosphere this is becoming a much bigger trend now, is these DM-less, GM-less, more collaborative role-playing games especially. And board games as well. You're seeing a lot of co-op board games. Like I said, I wouldn't suggest a hidden traitor mechanic unless the hidden traitor would be the director or someone who is not, quote unquote, on the same level as the actors. I also wanted to build this research and do this paper and stuff because I think it would help young actors, especially in high schools and colleges, who may not be sold on acting right away, kind of dabble with it a little bit more, kind of dip their toes in a safe environment. I remember, in high school, if you were ever in theater in high school and you went on into the business and stuff, there was always those two kids that just did not want to be there. The guidance counselor put them there because it was an easy A. And when they did improv games, they screwed around and were miserable for 185 days of the year. Might not always be able to do a board game or a video game or something like that, but it might help reach them. It might help reach something that they enjoy and put it in a way that they understand it and enjoy it. And they may, who knows, the theater bug may bite them. I also I'm a big proponent of alternative methods and stuff and evolution of methods. We've been doing things in the theater world similarly for so long. Now, I will say in the last 10 years, at least, there has been a big shift in methodologies and the way we do things and the way we interact with each other. Oh, the other thing, I didn't write it in my notes. In the card game, the one thing in the card game of Fiasco that I really like is everybody gets a card that says, "Let's not go there." I think that's extremely important because it is consent. The Fiasco does get very, very dark. And we've seen, and there's no denying over the last 40 to 50 years of role-playing games that there have been if you've ever played D&D, there's been uncomfortable moments that you may not have been comfortable with something, or someone might not have been comfortable with something, and there was really nothing that they could do. That is changing as it is in the theater world. Consent and everything is becoming, and communication is much more open, which I think is great. Especially so in Fiasco. Now you can put that in there in the dice version of the game. I just really appreciated in the card version of the game, which I do have. I didn't bring it. I have it with me up in the room if anyone wants to take a look at it. Find me and I'll bring it down and show it to you. I think that's very important that there's a card that says, let's not go there. You can acknowledge it. You can apologize if need be. Roll it back. Collaborate with that person. Well, what would be a better option? Like, you continue to collaborate, build this story, and there's a mutual respect and admiration between the artists. That is it for me. Does anybody have any questions for me? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. The future of what? Sure. So I honestly think it's going to depend on show, mostly. If everyone can get on the same page of vision, I think if a director comes to me and says, I want to do Our Town, but I want to put it in a certain decade. A director's job is to convey to the actors, the technicians, the scenic designers, the producers, so they'll fund it, his vision for the show. And the actors and everyone there is to help collaborate. I think the biggest thing that we have to see is collaboration. So many times, I mean, I've worked with directors where they said, okay, I want you to do it this way. I was like, okay, and I do it that way, and I ask, well, why? Well, that's the way I want it. I believe as a director, actor, technician, everything, every decision you must make must have a text-based answer. I don't think, well, that's the way I want it. Why? And if you can't answer why, you've lost me personally. I think theater does need to be more collaborative. I don't know if the director will ever disappear or should ever disappear. I think having a figurehead there to at least keep the ship pointed one way. Because we've all been in rooms where we've all had great ideas, and we end up talking for 3 hours and nothing gets done. Or we get through half a scene because we all have these great ideas. And I love that. And I love that about theater. I really just think it depends on production. I think Shakespeare especially can be much more collaborative. And I don't think necessarily if everyone who's going to be in the cast is agreeance that we're going to do Hamlet in space. Cool. We're going to do Hamlet in space. Because Shakespeare kind of allows a little bit more for that, the ability to gender bend, the ability to set in different places, times, and such. If someone wants to do Carousel, I think a director needs to be there to kind of keep, okay, the true north and the running line of the thing. Does that answer your question? Okay. And I'd love to talk, if you find me, and if I didn't, I would love to talk more. Is there any other questions? Awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me at my first panel here at MAGFest. I would like to do. I'm going to try and do like a part 2 next year, but I'm going to primarily focus on Dungeons and Dragons. That's my goal. We'll see if that happens. Thank you guys so much. Enjoy your MAGFest.